Donald Trump está completamente aterrorizado, y como era de esperarse, esto significa que está escapando. Se avecina un cierre de gobierno, y aunque Donald Trump está haciendo todo lo posible por huir de esto, y también está haciendo todo lo posible por desviar la culpa, sabe que no puede hacerlo. También sabe que el hombre que afirma ser el mejor negociador del mundo no puede negociar un acuerdo porque en este punto ha perdido toda la ventaja. Ahora, antes de entrar en cómo Donald Trump se está escondiendo, quiero que entremos en lo último que necesitas saber sobre este cierre de gobierno. Y esto viene de parte del senador Chris Murphy. Mira, por favor.
I just came from the Senate floor. We are shutting down, and we're shutting down because Donald Trump thinks he's a king. This is totally avoidable, but Donald Trump told Republicans don't negotiate with Democrats. That's why this government is shutting down. We didn't shut down when Joe Biden was president. Why? Because Democrats, when they were in the majority, took their responsibility to govern seriously, reached out across the aisle, and built bipartisan funding agreements with Republicans. But what is most important now that we are in this shutdown, is for Democrats to understand that our cause is righteous, and that if we approach this argument with confidence and with gusto, we will win it in the American public. But if we look weak, if we look like we don't believe in our cause, then we will lose this argument, and the country will suffer. What are we saying? We aren't asking for the moon. We are simply saying we don't want health insurance premiums to go up by 75% on the American public. That's what Republicans have engineered as a means to pay for their giant tax cut for billionaires and corporations. We're not asking for some big new healthcare program. We're simply saying if we're going to vote for a budget, we want that budget to not increase premiums on families across this country by 75%, bankrupting American families. You know what else we want? We want this president to start acting lawfully. I have no obligation to vote for a budget that destroys our democracy. In fact, I have a moral obligation to oppose a budget that funds a pursuit of the president's enemies through a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and imprisonment. The American people don't want this giant increase in premiums. The American people don't want the president censoring his critics, locking up his political enemies. But the only way we win this argument is by going out there and being loud, consistent, and confident that the American people are on our side. This fight is righteous, protecting American families from bankruptcy due to Trump's giant cost increases. This fight is righteous, protecting American democracy from destruction. And so let's go out there and win it.
La forma en la que los republicanos están tratando de enmarcar esta lucha te dice bastante de lo que necesitas saber, porque esto te demuestra qué tan asustados están y cuánto entienden sobre cómo los estadounidenses ven sus grandes fracasos. La razón por la que están hablando de la atención médica para personas indocumentadas, esta mentira gigantesca que ellos están promoviendo, es porque los republicanos entienden que las primas están subiendo, que la gente poco a poco está perdiendo cobertura médica y que la culpa sea como sea va a terminar recayendo en sus hombros. Así que necesitan inventar cualquier mentira para impulsar su narrativa. ¿Pero qué crees? No le está funcionando. Incluso están confrontando a Mike Johnson por esas mismas mentiras. Mira el clip, por favor.
And $185 billion has been saved already in fraud, waste, and abuse.
So basically, what you did was narrow the eligibility for certain people to get access to the ACA subsidies. What they want to do is undo the changes that Republicans made in that. But basically, wouldn't that only affect people who do have legal status, people who are refugee seekers here in the United States, asylum seekers here?
Those are two totally different issues. Now, they've created this as a new argument that they have as to why they should not keep the government open, but they're arguing a December policy debate for a September funding issue. The subsidies that you're talking about don't expire until the end of December.
No. Those are the subsidies for just everyday Americans. That's one thing that obviously has been the main premise of their argument. But you're saying they want to give free health care to people who are in the United States illegally.
That is exactly what the effect will be.
But when I looked at it, there's a little nuance because they want to undo changes that y'all made, narrowing who is eligible to get that. Those are people who are refugee seekers, asylum seekers. They're not technically people who are here illegally, just cross the border.
No, this is exactly what will happen. And Maxine Waters admitted, I think accidentally today on the House steps, they want to give health care to everybody.
But Maxine Waters is not in charge. She's not the one. She didn't write
She's
this
one of the senior
proposal
leaders in
as
the
the
House,
bill that Democrats are
and everybody
proposing.
should Google it and read their counter proposal
But you see
yourself.
my point, right? You're making this argument that they want to just give health care to everyone who's here illegally. This is not for people who cross the border and don't have paperwork. These are people who have temporary protected status.
No tienen base legal y ni siquiera tienen poder de negociación. Esa es la razón por la que Donald Trump se ha terminado escondiendo. El líder Jeff dice a los reporteros que no ha habido contacto con los líderes del Partido Republicano desde que comenzó el cierre. Los republicanos han cerrado el gobierno porque no quieren proporcionar atención médica a los estadounidenses de clase trabajadora. Y luego están corriendo por el Capitolio mintiendo al respecto. Así que Donald Trump, desde que comenzó este cierre, no le ha dirigido la palabra ni a Hakeem Jeffries ni a Chuck Schumer. Él simplemente se está escondiendo y está completamente en pánico. Esto, créeme, que te dice todo lo que necesitas saber. Y también esto demuestra por qué es un gran momento para que los demócratas alcen la voz. Porque los republicanos, claro, están promoviendo sus mentiras. En gran parte prefieren mantenerse alejados de esta conversación. Y por esa razón tenemos que aprovechar la oportunidad para definirla en nuestros términos. Y Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hizo un gran trabajo aquí. Mira, por favor.
I mean, Chris, we're here to help people. We are here in the midst of this destruction of the federal government, the federal safety net, $1 trillion eviscerated from people's health care, their Medicare, their Medicaid in this country, with prices that are skyrocketing and life becoming completely untenable for the American people. We are here to try to be a backstop and to be that backstop, which is what the American people have elected us to do.
So right now there's this sort of back and forth about the ACA tax credits. And there's kind of a strange dynamic that I want to get your sense of, right? Because at one level, negotiating over the ACA tax credits is important. I mean, there are people who are going to see their premiums go up 15, 20%, like huge amounts are going to spike. Republicans don't like these extenders. Democrats do. They think it's good for people. But that's fully in the lane of like normal politics. And then at the same time, like the president of the United States assembled 800 military commanders to say, I want you're going to have to go to war against your fellow citizens in American cities. And I think people are having a little bit of a hard time of like, we're going to have a fight on the shutdown about the tax credits, but not about the president wants to declare war on Americans, even though I understand those two are conceptually distinct. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, Chris, but I think that's something for us to really set the record straight here on. This is not a fight over tax credits. This is a fight over your ability to go to a pharmacy and afford your insulin. We're not talking about just 15 or 20% increases in people's premiums. Tomorrow, healthcare companies, and today, healthcare companies are finalizing the premiums that everyday Americans are going to be paying. And we are talking about a doubling of monthly healthcare premiums, not even including your deductible, in terms of what people are going to be paying next year because of $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that were put together earlier this year. And I don't know about anybody else, but I do not think that this is just about a tax break or a small tax extender. This is about fighting not just on tax breaks, community health centers, and ensuring that we have a stability of the American healthcare system. And when Republicans use a legislative mechanism to gut the American healthcare system, we have to use a legislative mechanism in order to restore it and to fight for it. Because at the end of the day, people may talk about tax credits this and tax credits that. What they do understand is when you have insulin and you can't afford it. What they do understand is when your kid has chemotherapy or your spouse gets diagnosed with cancer and you go into a hospital and it doesn't get covered. And you have to choose life and death, what this is about. Now, that does not mean that we ignore the abhorrent violation of law and norms and what is happening with our U.S. cities, but we have a broad spectrum of ways and places that we can fight, including our governors, our attorney generals, and our state and municipal leaders, as you just saw.
So I just want to make sure I understand this just from your perspective here. So, and I think this is generally the view of congressional leadership as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If there was bipartisan compromise, right? If everyone came together, the leaders of the parties, the president, and said, yes, these 5 things, we're going to make sure that these premium supports keep going. We're going to fund community health centers, whatever the sort of asks on appropriation around people's affordable health care. If those were met, Democrats would be a yes. Like, that is the box that this is happening in, as opposed to we can't fund a Department of Justice that prosecutes political enemies or whatever else might be out there.
Well, let me tell you, Chris, the mechanism by which that deal is locked is not just about agreeing in concept on tax credits. We need to do it with no tricks, no games, and no backdoors, which includes rescissions. And when we talk about rescissions, that is the mechanism that the federal government is using to gut and destroy rule of law across the board. So we are fighting to ensure that health care is protected for every American. But the way that we do that also means that the only way that you guarantee that is by forcing them to adhere to the rule of law, which means eliminating the rescission loopholes that they put in the CR earlier this year, which the Senate unfortunately had caved on then, and we're ensuring that doesn't happen now.
Yeah, the quick 10-second version for people that haven't followed this is that, you need 60 votes to get the filibuster to appropriate funds for the government, but they can pass a rescission, which is to claw back some of the money already agreed to by 50 votes. So they have this kind of like cake and eat it too model where it's like, oh yeah, we'll come together, we'll pass a bipartisan appropriations bill, and then when we've done that, then we'll go and get rid of the stuff we don't like, which just seems like an insane way to negotiate.
It's no way to negotiate. And again, we don't even have to get into the technicalities of this. But what is important to understand is that the way that you honor an agreement and the way that we honor our fight for health care and to define and to also protect everyday Americans' ability to afford their health care, to cover their kids, to defend Medicaid. Those are the same mechanisms that we use to defend our rule of law, to defend the federal workers that we are trying to protect in this shutdown. Donald Trump is trying to play this bluffing game of, well, maybe what we're going to do is hold all the federal workforce hostage and fire everybody. Donald Trump has been firing everybody. We saw this with DOJ. We've seen this at the State Department. We've seen this at the Department of Justice. They are firing everybody. They are completely eliminating the federal workforce. And in order for us to stop this madness, we have to put a stop to it, and we have to stop enabling their abuse of power, including their use of rescissions. And when we're fighting on their health care, it forces them to act in ways in accordance with the law in other ways too.
Tienes que aprovechar esta oportunidad para luchar, tienes que tener coraje. Pero bueno, yo cumplí con mi misión, que es informarte, como lo hago absolutamente todos los días. Como siempre te digo, para mí lo más importante es tu opinión y me encantaría que la pongas en los comentarios. Además, si el video te gustó, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos así todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido con informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.